guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're enjoying the videos. I really enjoy doing them and speaking to the counsellors and therapists. I want you to do an interview yourself if you're a therapist or just talking about therapy, any aspects of therapy. You're most welcome to drop me a line and we'll set something up. So today we're going to be talking to a lady called Matilde, who's I think she's got a little bit of a background in art. She's a therapist, but it's well, I'll leave her to answer the questions and explain all. Let's see what she's got to say.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, good to meet you. Good to meet you. Yeah, that looks great.
Okay,
you look fantastic.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, and you. And yeah, thanks for joining today. Really appreciate you supporting the channel and coming on to tell us a little bit about yourself. I think to begin with, obviously, I want to look at a little bit about your background, and I think you sort of journey into becoming a therapist. Is that somewhere that something you'd like to share? Is it something that you'd like to?
Yeah, I'm open. I'm open for any question and see even where this conversation takes us.
Yeah. Okay. Were you wanting to become a therapist from your school days, or was it just something that came later on? Or?
It's something that came completely out of the blue in a way. I found myself in this country. I'm not originally from England. I'm Italian. So I moved to the UK when I was 40. I was coming from a very intense traumatic background with two parents who were both alcoholics, and I lost them because of alcohol. I went through some existential traumatic experiences, very painful when I was very young. I went through an earthquake when I was about 8 years old, and I was the only survival of my whole class because I wasn't actually there that day. So I had, life threw stuff at me. Mm-hmm. And when I moved to the UK, I moved I always say the reason was broken promises. So I moved to the UK trying to find something a bit different. And in about 5 years' time after I moved, I found myself with no job. And with all also the legalities of being Italian in here and still having stuff that I had to do in Italy. So I remember the job seekers sent me to Rancho College to see what was available, because you've got to show, of course, that you're doing something. And I remember that I just picked level 2 counseling, and that was a start. Yeah. That was a start for me at the age of 45. Yes. And when I went there, I thought, I may as well at this point stay for level 3. And then I thought, I think that is helping me quite a lot to understand the dynamics and the drama triangle and everything that went on with my parents. I discovered perfect daughter's concept as being this perfect adult daughter of an alcoholic. And then I went into level 4 and I did my diploma.
Wow. So there was a lot of the training which actually, I don't know, did it put perspective on life or view things differently, the training?
It gave me an understanding and also a language to understand what was going through me. I've always been a seeker. I've always been very inquisitive, and I've always been connected and in love with existentialism and the big questions. The big question, from the earthquake, from the age of 8, why are we here? We've got to suffer, and especially if I've been spared, what is it that I've got to do in this life? It seemed that life kept on throwing me doors and I always got shovels in my face, like, you got to stop, you can't go there, you can't go there. So I always went deeper looking for answers. And also when I was 21, I think that my brain and my emotional well-being couldn't take any longer. So my brain decided to shut down completely. And I just really shut, and the coming out of this black brain period, that, as I call it, was painful, was hard, but I still had to deal with everything and the environment around me.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, in terms of well, I know, sorry, this was the first time I heard this So it was an earthquake, and that you lost all your classmates. In
Yeah.
that must have been a massive thing to kind of
It,
get
it
your
was, it
head
was,
around, so to speak. But it's
yes. It was not until, I've got to say, first of all, that it was not until I was 50 and I started doing art at university after I did my counseling courses. I went and did an art foundation in art and design at Blackman College, and then that led me to a BA at York and a master's in art and design. I'm doing a PhD now in fine art at the same time. But it was only because of creativity and art that I managed to take the pain out.
I see. Yeah,
It wasn't through the talking. I've always thought I parked it there. But dealing with the art, I realized that I managed to detach myself from what was my pain, what was my questioning, and what was my parents' pain that I've sucked as a sponge. Because, of course, they were traumatized in a way, way more than me. My dad was the head of the rescue team. So, we went all through. So I had this constant talking about the earthquake and everything. But it was only late, and I'm talking about a couple of years ago, when I managed to actually take a step back and says, hold on a second. I wasn't even there. So that wasn't my pain. That was the pain that was just like generationally and culturally has been passed on to me.
Yeah.
So I took a step back and I said, I'm actually a happy person. I don't have to be miserable just because of what happened in 1976. So I can let that go.
Yeah, wow, and that's a massive achievement, isn't it? Because it's such a sort of a big event, and to be able to get to a point. There's so much work which you've done by the sounds of things, and you say you're studying fine art. You're doing you're doing a PhD in fine art.
I'm doing a PhD in philosophy and implementing a methodology which I have termed paleophenomenology. I'm interested in the emergence of consciousness in Neanderthals, like the very first emergence of consciousness.
Oh.
I'm going back to the same questions. Why are we here? So it took me a very sort of like convoluted way in so many years, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it? Because it's really asking those kind of deep questions about life, existence. What is this? And that's no doubt been a driving force and in your career. And in terms of because obviously you work as how would you describe your practice? Because everyone describes it a little bit differently.
I definitely am eclectic, and I call myself more of an existential psychotherapist because I don't like to work on the details. I like to work on the big questions.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's fascinating. So in terms of someone coming to see you for treatment, you will work with them on their sort of the immediacy of the problems, but then you will take it deeper into that bigger perspective, so they have a bigger view. And it's really quite interesting, isn't it, when you talk about your own experience, because it's kind of reflective, isn't it? It's saying actually, the way to understand to move beyond trauma or not be stuck in it is to get to those deeper questions, you think? Yeah.
And I'm grateful for all of my traumatic experiences, because I don't think that without them I would be now doing what I'm doing and enjoying even a PhD process and deep research if I didn't have the experiences that I had. Because for example, when I experienced my black brain, and when it switched on again, what happened was that actually I was overflooded with all emotion and sensations, and I could see everything. I could feel everything. I could sense everything. And learning to discriminate between what was necessary, what was not necessary, what was needed. But, every shade, every color, every speck of dust. And it was just like overflowing. But that to me reminds me potentially in a phenomenological way of what a Neanderthal could have, experienced the first time that he stopped and thought, I have a thought. What was a thought? I remember closing my eyes and having a dream. What are the images? So there's this kind of a split between the visible and also being flooded with an invisible things that you've got to learn to manage. And I think that those are the same big questions that they ask that we are asking now.
Yeah.
Why this? Why nothing has changed. Literally nothing has changed. I think that we are going through the same questions, and especially the same dynamics between the people who are asking the question and they are starting on a journey of therapy, and the environment and the people who are actually at home and sometimes don't want you to ask those questions, and they are happy with the status quo. Yes. So
Yes. It's like a collective hypnotization, isn't it, in some ways? But you're saying that kind of breaking through of it is wow. I can feel the power of it, though. It's really, just even when you're describing it, it's amazing. So in terms of, obviously, this was, I mean, when you experienced this, it was a big change in your life, wasn't it? And this has been the energy, the power behind, obviously, a lot of what you've done in your career, I guess. Imagine.
It's again, it's the same questions. I remember having a very intense experience right after the earthquake. I'm thinking about probably a week or 10 days after, in which I was sitting in this very sort of like dark lit, badly lit dining room in my old auntie's house, and we could hear, like the helicopters and everything. And I remember that my uncle brought in the house one of those like citizen band radios, and we could hear all the crackling and everything. And we were trying to communicate with my father, who was still up in the mountains in the village, and trying to have a communication. 1976, no phone, no mobile phones. There was absolutely nothing available. And I remember that I was sitting there and I could hear my mother crying. I could hear and the screams of the people that were coming through this radio, and my uncle was of course very moved and very young, and all the, as I said, the helicopter that was kept on flying over our house because they were going towards the hospital. And I remember thinking, I don't understand, why is these people crying? Because we are just spirits, isn't it? We are, this people die and then we're going to come back in another life. And I remember thinking this thought, I am as old as the mountains. And the second thought was, I can't say this to anybody because they will think that I'm crazy. I'm just an 80-year-old little girl. And that thought about the questioning of who we are and why we are here, what kind of a journey we are doing, led me through my constant questioning and trying to understand and trying different techniques and trying different paths and see what actually worked best for me.
Yeah.
This is the constant, being a seeker, asking a lot of questions and reading loads of books. And so this has always been my path. And I try to convey the same sense of curiosity to my clients. I always say, if you want to come and work with me, first of all, you have to work. You don't come for an hour and just whine and moan. You have to work. And then, of course, I tell them, start reading books. Let's start with the small ones. I've got like a series of 5-6 books that I say to my clients, have you read those ones? Why don't you try and reading those ones? Just go out for a walk and have a think. Switch off the digital. Wow. Just go within and expand and read and ask questions.
Yeah. Oh, dare I ask, those books, you say you got 4 or 5 books. What would you recommend? I mean, just say.
Okay, so I always say people should read Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. They should read the Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Bach. What else? Iron Man and Iron Woman by Ted Hughes, because he wrote them when his wife Sylvia Plath passed away, and it was the short stories that he would tell his children after the death of his wife, the Sylvia Plath, the poetess. And the other one is, of course, Little Prince. But also for women, just read, I don't know, Alice Through the Looking Glass, or just read stories, even children's stories. They can tell us so much. And if you are like me, a traveler and a sort of like a voyager, and somebody, just read On the Road by Kerouac. I said, let's go back to the classics. just enjoy, just pick up something, that expands your thinking.
Yeah, so it's almost
Okay,
like
now
inducing, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's inducing people into that reflective state, isn't it? And that's what you're saying. You're saying start by reading the books. You're saying you have to do the work. You have to allow your mind into that space for that transformation potential, isn't it? And then you start doing the work.
And I always say, I think that we are so many different types of people and so much uniqueness around the world, and not every therapy nor every approach is valid for everybody, and I think that we have to go through. I had to go through years of moaning and whinging before actually saying, well, I'm actually 100% responsible now for what I feel, for my experience, and if I don't change, nothing around me changes. And so having a sort of like a self-focus of, well, what's going on in here, and going back to the big questions. And this is why I always say working existentially, because if you are coming to me with a promise, I don't know, they're going through a divorce, for example, I always say the divorce is not the problem, because even if we talk about the divorce, then you will lose a job, and then you'll come back because you've got a problem with the losing of the job, or somebody passes away, then you'll come. Says, let's talk about ending straight away. Let's take away all the details. I'm not interested in the details, because that is like fog to me. Let's go back to the root of the thing. How are you feeling about endings? How are you feeling about being alone? How are you feeling about not being able to control other people? That's a big existential thing in the end, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's so it's I can see what you're saying. You're going straight to the heart of it, in essence.
Yeah.
Do you find you get a bit of resistance there when people are reluctant to go into that space? Do they need much urging, or they?
I find that I get no clients because but the moment that actually I'm showing them, I've got a couple of like classical drawings that I do. I show them the triangle of drama, which I call the meanie weenie genie. It's the classical, the first thing. How the balance in the relationship within his environment. You are.
Would you? I was going to say, would you explain? Because obviously, I'm thinking, because this is going to go on YouTube. Would you explain a little bit about that drama triangle? I'm putting you on the spot.
So drama triangle is a very beautiful thing. It explains how normally we always look at life from the victim perspective. There is always something is wrong around me. This person is not performing as I would like to. I don't get things that I would like to do. And we are a victim because we always see a baddie in our life. We always have our own sheriff of Nottingham that actually just not. For me, it was my mom and my dad, but sometimes it was God, because things that didn't go the way that I wanted them to go. Or my I don't know, ex-husband, or university, or the lecturer who gave me a bad grade. There is always somebody else to blame. And so what happens is that in life, we look for a rescuer, which is, a new phone, a new job, a new drink, or a new holiday, a new lover, something new, a new stuff. And normally I always say we are born with our own personal triangle of drama, and we spend the life looking for somebody's whose triangle of drama matches ours, and we can match each other and create our own personal dramatic soap opera where everything is because she said and he said and then he did and she did and I was expecting her to do, and yada yada yada, which becomes tedious and boring. The triangle of drama is a beautiful thing because automatically shows you where you are and where you stand. And the only way for you to get out of the triangle of drama is, instead of being a victim, become a creator, and you go out, you step out. And so I always say to my clients, the first step is for you to get a journal and start journaling, because in that journal, you are becoming the emperor dictator of your own world, and you can write and you can say, it's the first moment in which you say, this is my space, this is my white page, this is my blank page, I can write whatever I want, and then you can then start envisioning a future for you. And you have got to do it every day. You sit there every day. It's the first cup of coffee that you get. You take your journal out, and it has to be done longhand, because there is a connection between the hand and the brain, which becomes very phenomenological, becomes very tactile and very real. And it's very freeing, but also very hard, because at that point you realize that, well, I have to get up in the morning and do that before everything else, which means I need to put my alarm half an hour earlier. Do I want to do it? And if I don't want to do it, it's okay, because it's somebody else's life. It's not my life. But that is the very big hurdle of what is it that you want from your life.
Yeah, and I can see how that really sort of fits with, when you're talking about, bringing people right to that heart of endings, because it brings that consciousness around that victim position, doesn't it? And when people, what you're saying is, when people become conscious of that, they then have to start the work, which is, like you say, is to start to create, to be creative in their own lives, which is.
And then at that point, you can see that everybody in your life can be seen actually as an inspiration for what not to do in your life. And you actually start thanking them. Because I don't want to be like you. My dad passed away at the age of 56, which was a year younger than I am now. And his last days were only, if only, if only, if only, if only, and I decided that I didn't want to die saying, if only.
What was it? So this is a very personal question, but what was it like listening to your dad saying that? Because was he? What am I asking you? Was it difficult to see his regret, kind of thing?
It was difficult to see his regret, and also realizing that when he died, I already had 5 years of trying to get out of my black brain, and coming to terms with the fact that my tears for his death were tears for me, not for him. Because, of course, I was crying off. I was very honest with myself, with my now ex-husband. Said the wrong one died at the wrong time. Should have my mother died first instead of my father. My mother was really a handful, and she died only when I was 41. My dad died when I was 25. So by that time, I was trying to get out of that situation, and I realized that I was crying for, what am I going to do without him? How my life is going to be without a dad. Nobody will understand me if I haven't got a dad. And then I remember the nurse that was with my dad when he passed away looked at me and said, so you're not crying for him, you're crying for you. What kind of a daughter are you? And I thought, actually, yeah, that's loneliness. That's abandonment again. That's me. And I think that was one of the many beginnings in trying to get out of this kind of like funk that I found myself in taking full responsibility, for
So that's a really sort of, I guess, a cornerstone of your treatment, isn't it? It's like saying it is about responsibility and getting people to that point of consciousness, awareness through, like you say, inspiring books, conversations, bringing to that part of consciousness. But then it's working with that sense of responsibility within your clients to really take ownership, because you start creating from that point. That's what you're saying. You start. And you say journaling. Journaling is a good place to start. That's a space where do you give people direction, or is it just space to?
Well, I'm gonna be a pusher for another book, which is titled "The Artist's Way" by Julia Cameron, and she's the one who devised this morning pages. So she said you've got to fill in 3 pages of longhand writing every morning. That's the first thing that you've got to do, and because the open stream of consciousness, and you're just writing down everything that actually comes through your mind. The beauty of this is that most of the time my client says, well, I don't know what to write. And I says, well, I can tell you what you write. You just write, I don't know what to write. 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 And then at a certain point, what happens is that a thought will pass through your mind, which normally, and sorry for my French, is what the fuck Matilde told me to do, because I don't understand what. And I say, write that. I don't understand what Matilde. And then that's when you start. And then it just opens up. You sort of like a floodgates. You just start writing, and you just write everything. Yeah.
Wow.
And the book also gives you like a 12-week prompt. You don't have to follow them if you want to. But they are a very good starting point. And I've been doing the process of the morning pages and the artist way religiously for the past 13 years now, constantly. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's a discipline. It's a discipline.
It's a discipline.
Is it? Would you describe it as a discipline? A discipline has usually got a negative.
It's a routine. It's a methodology. I think that, if you want to change, if you want something, you just go through all the process of doing whatever it is that you want to do to get to that point, isn't it? So I remember that when I used to smoke and I had no money, I wouldn't have any problems in going out and asking for somebody if they had a cigarette to give me, because that was a need. So if you want something, you find the reason and the way to do the things that needs to be done.
Yeah, I'm with you.
There are things that needs to be done regardless. When you are becoming an adult, in a way, you know that there are things that needs to be done whether you like them or not. And I think that is a choice. I really want to change.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to change that much. I'm still in the stage in which I'd rather other people change so they make my life better instead of actually me changing to make my life better, regardless of what that means for me and the people around me.
Yeah, absolutely. Really powerful accountability and consciousness around you have the power to create your life. And that's a consciousness, isn't it?
I'll tell you a very short story. I remember my they both passed away, so I can tell. My ex-mother-in-law. Remember that when my father-in-law had the same issues as my parents, there was a bit of extra drinking. So when my parents were in a sort of like a rehab center, we sort of suggested that he might have gone to, which I thought, we can just go visit once and we just meet all the three of them. And I remember that my mother-in-law said no, because she was probably the good one. And it's like a balancer thing. It is very easy to be the good one when you are surrounded by people who you think are not as good. But if they become good, what is becoming of you?
Yeah. It's a big shift in identity, isn't it? I think in that sense. Yeah.
So if you're being good and holy is only because you're surrounded by bad people, it's very easy to be sort of like a big fish in a very small pond, isn't it? But the moment that actually you realize that other people are doing the good things and everybody praises them, nobody's caring anymore about you. So you've got to grow, and some people are not happy. This is why the dynamics of addiction, for example, is fascinating. And I think that in this country, there is not enough attention to the family members, because family needs to change too. Family needs to go through growth and recovery too.
I see what you're saying. So that's something that you would suggest for, again, so for families where there are issues of addiction. You're saying actually collectively you do the work. There has to be a change in consciousness in the family.
To take the responsibility and realizing that they are most of the times enabling somebody else's addiction. And addiction is nothing to do with the substance. Addiction is to do with the emotional addiction. We're talking about the codependence again, is the root of the problem. So we don't care about if it is alcohol or heroin or porn or scratch cards. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the fact that there is a codependency, a need to express something. And the soul is screaming from the inside just to let me out, because there is something that you need to do. And they are not doing it. So they're trying to pacify that with other things, external stuff. And then again, triangle of drama that goes on in the family. I had to admit that I was happy when both my parents were drinking, because it meant that nobody was checking on me. Nobody told me, where are you going? How are you? What are you eating? Have you done your homeworks? Are you going to school? Because they were drunk.
It gave you a freedom then.
I was happy, because when they were not drinking, that was the fear of putting the key in the keyhole, turning the key, and not knowing what's going to be behind the door. Are they going to be happy? Are they going to be angry? Are they going to fight? Are they going to hurt each other? Are they going to blame me? Because, of course, that becomes the moment in which they are together and they need to attack somebody. And, of course, I was the punching ball at that point. So when they were both drunk, I was the happiest person.
Wow, that's really insightful, isn't it? Because it's and that's ownership, isn't it? It's like you say, it takes a lot to get to that point of realization. Actually, them having that control mechanism, being inebriated, actually means that I don't get the pain, as it were, because they're in that state.
My realization happened the other way around, when I realized that I was used. So when I had my black brain moments, and I was given 3 injections of diazepam per day to keep me quiet and everything. After about 3-4 years, I remember realizing that I became the excuse for other people not to do things. Oh, we can't come to the meeting because, I've got to look after Matilde. Oh, I can't go there. We can't go on a holiday. Or I can't give you this money because, I've got to look after Matilde. And one day I thought, I can look after myself perfectly well. Do you know what I mean? I don't actually have any problems. That is your problem. And that was, for me, a light bulb. And then, of course, I had to look the reverse. Yeah.
Wow. So again, consciousness, even through that, isn't it? It's just when that moment comes. And you talk about kind of moments that have changed your life, moments in that shift in consciousness. There's been a lot of that kind of you've recognized through your developmental journey. Does some of them come about through literally thought, or is it through relationship, or did you have therapy yourself when you were younger?
I had therapy. I've been fortunate enough also that I had 2 amazing supervisors in my practice, who were one was very warmly and motherly, but also in a good balance between being strict and being professional and being sort of like warm. And my second supervisor was a Jungian trained person. So there was a lot of dream analysis, a lot of everything, a lot of archetypal work and collective unconscious work, which of course is, work and talking about consciousness and very early human beings and rock art and etc. That's, of course, fits perfectly the bill. But I have a very strict practice. Which means that every morning I lit my candles. I've got some, shamanic drummings for now. I sit there and I'm sort of like in 15 minutes of meditation, and any download or any nothing sometimes, or just the journal and take my journal out. That's my coffee moment. I use tools such as oracle cards or tarot cards, and whether I like it or not, I just think, oh, there is something here that is still not right, isn't it? When something comes up and I think, okay, so let's try to explore and unravel whatever is around, because I can notice that there is something there, but sometimes it's masked by other things. Yeah. So it's like an Ariadne thread, isn't it? I'm following this red thread that takes me wherever I am. Yeah. I have to say that I'm lucky because I've got a lot of free time. So I'm not married and I haven't got children. So, it means that I'm free to dive deep into the work. And I understand that this commitment is not for everybody, but that doesn't mean that it can't be done.
Yes. Yeah. It's a great example, isn't it? But you live it, don't you? As opposed to just instructing it. And I think sometimes I can be a little bit guilty of that, saying, oh, do I say not as I do kind of thing, but it's a great sort of discipline, which again it sort of emanates out to your clients, and again that's part of the work, isn't it, in that regard. In terms of, obviously, I know you like you say, going back to your art. Do you use art in your therapy directly then, in that sense? Or?
I'm designing now a series of cards, as in connected always with my paleophenomenological things, connected with very early symbols that you can find in Upper Paleolithic rock art, and I've used them already with some clients, and it's beautiful to see how people positions these symbols. There are no writings, nothing, just symbols in different places depending on their moods and everything, and their own symbolic meaning and representation meanings that they give. So this is part of the things that I use. I'm not trained as an art therapist, and I don't. My focus has always been not in the representation or the figurative. I'm interested in impulse and the need to do. Because drawing, which is my practice, drawing is a practice. So I'm always interested in the practice, not in what we make, not in the outcome. I'm interested really in the practice. Yeah.
I see. Okay. And just one thing, sort of questions buzzing around my mind, because obviously you are, you talk about this kind of consciousness in Neanderthals, that moment. Do you? Because I think it's fascinating. It's just fascinating, isn't it? In some ways, what do you have any theories on it? Any of your own theories?
My theory is seems to be like one of my supervision sessions for my PhD. So my theory is that Neanderthals lived in Europe for about 300,000 years before Homo sapiens arrived on the scene, and we managed to decimate them in literally, I don't know, 5,000 years. They were gone. Because we came, and probably we were stronger. We were climate change was part of it, but also I think the awareness of consciousness. So as human beings, so Neanderthals and Homo sapiens sort of like emerged parallels in a way. So from a common ancestor. And I think that we were both meant to have an expansion of awareness and consciousness. Neanderthals did like the first step, and then they disappeared. And then Homo sapiens came and did this big outburst of drawings and ibises and stuff, and horrocks and bulls and things, etc. in the caves. One thing that I find very intriguing is that every drawing that Homo sapiens did are very boring. They are the same in every cave, and sometimes even on this Facebook post, you see, there is this drawing in I don't know, Central American, very similar to a drawing in India, very similar to a drawing, I don't know, in Siberia. And everybody says, whoa, look at this, amazing. And I'm thinking, no, boring. Because we started, even from the very tools and everything, we started doing things in a very technological, industrialized and copy way. We were boring from the beginning. Neanderthal, instead, were just poets. Every tool is different. Every tool seems to have a different kind of a care and attention. And I'm interested in the marks I'm not interested in the similar things. I'm interested in why there is that mark over there. Because that to me is the sign of a rebellious mind, of somebody who's thinking outside of the box, somebody who's trying and testing. Somebody who's thinking, whoa, that's, we would read in our it's like kind of a gestalt, and the I, thou, the separation. I'm thinking somebody probably just stood there and thought, oh, these are my hands. How do I know that my hands are my hands? Because I see them. Yes. So I am both the subject seen and the object that has been seen. What is going on there? So I found all of these questions very fascinating.
Yeah, wonderful. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you, Matilde, and I really appreciate you sharing all this. It's absolutely what a wonderful life. I mean, really rich. I mean, in terms of experience, really quite massive challenges, but great inspiration and transforming that into, well, like I say, helping others. If do you have like a private practice that, if obviously if people wanted to contact you, do you do?
So I do, yes, I do work private practice. If anybody is interested in knowing a bit more, I do have a website, which is matildetomat.com. And if anyone is interested, I'm going to do like a very blunt sort of like a marketing thing about the story and the Perfect Daughters and the alcohol addiction work that I did. I wrote a book about, which is titled Rebel Therapy. And that's can be found. Well, there you go, smash the system.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
So yes, and that can be found on Amazon. Yes.
Oh, excellent. That's wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure and a joy to speak to you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, maybe we'll meet up again at some point. I don't know, but really good luck with your career and your PhD, finishing PhD and everything. And thanks for coming on the show. And
thank you for having me.
All right, okay.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Well, that was an inspirational interview there for me. I think what Matilda's been through there is just absolutely incredible experiences in life, but yet at the same time managed to bring a real triumph to developing her own self-practice. It's amazing how each individual therapist has a very different kind of practice, and just as Matilda was saying there, she really gets to kind of the heart of that sense of responsibility and ownership of our challenges and troubles, and it's you can see it in everything that she's been explaining there. But fantastic to talk to. I really appreciate Matilda joining today. If you want us to do a bit of work with Matilda, I will put, she just mentioned the details, I'll put those in the link below, so you can click on that and contact her if you want to do some therapy. And hope you enjoyed that. I really, really did, and I will see you again next time. See you soon.